I'm Sarah Nagel, and I've spent my career leading research and product development within some of the world's largest brands.
And I'm Chad Reynolds. I'm a serial entrepreneur and founder and CEO of Verve.
And this is AI Powered by People.
Each episode will dive into the latest AI developments and talk to an industry leader to help you better understand and utilize AI.
We'll take you inside some of the world's most famous companies and share examples of how AI is improving innovation, consumer engagement, media, and marketing.
No matter what industry you work in, we'll help you navigate one of the biggest disruptions to organizations and people today.
So Chad, how are you doing? What's up?
I'm good. I'm cold. It's a snow day here in town. All the kids are off school.
Oh, really?
So I've been getting kind of text every few minutes of when are you coming home to go sledding.
So how many inches does that take in Cincinnati for school to be out?
A solid 1.5.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
New Hampshire, it's like 1.5 feet. Like my kids' school, they're like, we don't do snow days. They're like, if you can get here, there's school.
Yeah, that's how it should be. But
well,
it is what it is.
Sledding.
They have fun, so it's fun.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
How was the week? Well, first off, let me compliment you on last week was our first episode. So
I'm going to compliment you too. Great job, Chad. That was awesome.
Thanks. I feel like we got our wardrobe in the same place too. It's
We've decided we're going to wear black.
Yes, it's the way to go.
Perfect.
It's the way to go. No, but it was awesome to get the first one out. Dustin was great. Excited for this week. So
yeah, we've got a really great guest this week too. So coming up, we're going to be talking to Nick Bennett, who is with Honda Motorcycles in Europe. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about what we're seeing in the headlines. It was a pretty big week this week. The World Economic Forum was held in Davos, and there was a lot of talk about generative AI with the world leaders and business leaders and folks from all over the world from a lot of different industries. Love to hear about what your big takeaways are.
I guess not shocking that AI kind of took over a lot of the key topics around it, as it is a key driver of the economy, or at least kind of how people are going to be working, especially with it being hosted in Europe. It's kind of the epicenter for regulation and discussion around it. So I don't know if you saw the panel led by Andrew Ross Sorkin. It was probably the most interesting kind of half-hour discussion with different leaders and brought together politics. Well, first off, did you see it? Did you see that?
I did watch it after you told me about it, and there were some pretty incredible folks on the panel.
Yeah, so for those who didn't see it, it brought together Prime Minister of Ireland, so more from the politician side, brought them together, but also you had Nick Clegg from Meta, who used to be the Deputy Prime Minister of the UK, and Mustafa Suleyman, who was one of the founders of DeepMind, and then currently founder of Inflection AI. So you brought together kind of a diverse set of individuals who are approaching space a little bit differently, from kind of being the creators of AI tools and also platforms, but also some of the politicians that may have kind of bore the brunt of some of the deep fakes and some other types of things that are out in the world there. But before I jump in, were there any of the things that stood out to you, when you saw it?
Yeah, so I watched through there. I mean, there were a lot of things that were pretty interesting about the panel, but I was listening to it was the Prime Minister of Ireland, and I thought it was pretty cool how he was talking about there should be kind of lifelong education around AI and how to adapt to folks, or for folks as they're entering the workforce or as they're changing jobs, because people aren't keeping the same jobs for 30 years anymore. They're going to be adapting and changing. I also thought it was interesting too how he was talking about how AI might bring about the ability to work less and have AI do more for us, because he was a doctor by trade too. Mm-hmm. So I think he's probably also thinking about it from the health perspective of taking a step back from stress. So I thought that was those are really great points.
What do you think about, so one of the first points Mustafa made on kind of how he might approach some of the regulation, was much more focused not on kind of how it all works, but much more on some of the identification of AI generated content. So implementing watermarking as one of the solutions that was kind of surfaced, where it was easy for people to detect what was created by people and what was created by machines. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting. I think we talk about that quite a bit at Verve too, thinking about like as these things are created, how will people know? And I think that there is I think it's a really good idea to start to think about like how do we mark them? How do we give people the ability to understand what is real, what isn't? Because it looks real. Like the people that are kind of these AI generated influencers, or they look real. They to kind of the untrained eye, and I think they're going to get even better. So it's going to be, and also like the images that are created and kind of where these things are going to be. So yeah, I think there needs to be some ability for folks to know what they're looking at. Is it created or is it or human, because I think that there's going to be as we move forward, there's always a culture and a counterculture. There's probably going to be a backlash to this as well. It's folks that are just like all human everything, and then there's going to be this AI generated content. So I think people should know what they're interacting with and
Right.
in looking at.
Do you think there should be, though, a watermark? I mean, if you apply it back to, painting, so you had original painters sign your name,
Hmm.
even do, the numbering of like 1 of 50. And then everything became essentially mass produced. So you'd go into a hotel and see the same painting
Hmm.
as, 1,000 other hotels. So do you think that watermark is going to be on the kind of human produced items, or is it going to be on the AI produced items? Because it seems like it
Like
almost is
everything's going to be
kind of
AI
a
generated.
reverse.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah,
might want to
I think that's a
watermark
really
things that are originally created.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It kind of feels like the maybe the on the human created, it would be like, hey, this is authentic. This is or authentically human. This is, created by hand. This is or created by a person. I think you're right. It might be the opposite now. So instead of, watermarking or invisible watermarking as I talked about with the AI images, it could be the inverse to
Yeah.
let people know about what's
Could be
created.
some good use cases for like Web3 and NFTs and other types of technology. It could also detect or track kind of the original pieces of
Hmm.
content, because it seems like those will be few and far between compared to what is machine generated.
Yeah.
And one of the other topics was around the EU has typically led a lot of the regulation around consumer data, for one, or social media platforms, kind of what's in and out of bounds. And there was definitely some discussion around has that kind of leadership within regulation stunted the growth of or startups creating new breakthrough technology, whereas those have seemed to come out of the U.S. who may have perceived kind of lack, more. I guess from a regulation standpoint, may have a little bit more relaxed feelings on it, or maybe have
Skirted
been
around it. Yeah, a little
yeah,
bit.
just kind of blaze a trail. But I don't know. When you look at some of the technology that is coming out of the States, I don't think there are, to speak from like an entrepreneur's perspective, trying to do things that are breaking regulations or things like that. You're trying to innovate or create, where there's friction, you're trying to create something new that solves a problem
Hmm.
in a new and interesting way. And you don't necessarily always think about kind of the rules first. You think about the pain points first.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, it could be, we've talked about this. It's going to be a personality difference between the EU and US, where it's like the intention isn't to break to break things or to, but there is that around innovation, it's like moving fast and failing and trying, experimenting, and maybe maybe folks in the EU are just a little bit more polite about kind of how they're approaching, innovation or approaching AI or the use of AI, and have that regulation just kind of in the back of their mind, or because maybe that's how businesses have been created for so long. There's been regulations around other types of businesses. So it will be interesting to see, what happens if there's regulations in the U.S. If that actually happens, kind of how that will impact the development of new brands and businesses. So I don't know. Maybe it's just we're it's a big personality difference.
Yeah. Well, I think the most compelling thing was just that we're having the conversation now. I think with kind of the rise of social platforms, it was just felt like it had already reached critical mass before anybody was really talking about any, any sort of problems or issues and things like that. Whereas now, especially politicians are much more up to speed on AI compared to how they were with kind of the predecessor of like social platforms, much more in tune with what's happening in real time as opposed to, using language that was like, like 4 years behind the times, and it didn't feel like
Yeah.
it fit in with kind of how people were innovating the space. But it's definitely in its infancy, and there's going to be so much innovation happening in the space. But it's always good to have the conversation while we're building of kind of what's in and out of bounds. So yeah, we can link the video in the show notes so you can check it out.
Yeah, it was a really great conversation. So let's move on to this article that we found around a report that Gartner created around. They say that half of consumers will abandon or significantly limit social media interactions by 2025. Chad, do you believe that? Do you believe that that's actually going to happen by
No,
2025? Why not?
no. I think you've got kind of I think you have people who are maybe like aging off of social platforms and going to more traditional channels, whereas you have a whole new generation coming into to social, and I think it's anything but curbing use, curbing their use or significantly limiting their interactions. If anything, they want more,
Yeah.
and are going to it for not just to stay in touch with friends and family, which is maybe how like kind of the older generation was using it.
Hmm.
This is the news. This is entertainment. This is community. This is connection. It's all of these. It's shopping. So
Yeah.
if anything, it's only going to increase around that. But I do think it's kind of changing the role of social media. It's again not so much social anymore. It's more entertainment.
I don't really buy this either. And they said that, a lot of the cause was around mistrust of AI and kind of like bad information. And, yeah, I can definitely imagine that for older generations. But I think about Gen Z, and it's not slowing down at all. And I think that they'd actually be excited about, the potential of AI and its possibilities for social media.
I think if you look at what's happening, even with just the rise of AI influencers
Mm,
and how both for brands that are investing in AI influencers to to like the end consumer that can actually get value out of like a same kind of quote air quote person who can speak multiple languages, be doing lots of different things. There's definitely some benefits to this for everyone. So just see just a rise of new types of communication through these platforms. And it's definitely kind of more proliferated within younger generations, but it doesn't mean it's kind of exclusive. I think that people are excited about having kind of everything in one app where you
hmm
can discover, learn about new things, shop and buy things, and still get that like personal touch
Yeah.
from a community.
So the last headline that we're going to talk about is coming from the Emmys. Did you watch the Emmys?
I watched a part of it, mostly just the acceptance speeches, which is a weird part to watch. I just wanted to see Kieran Culkin, his speech from Succession. Just a fascinating person and character and show, really, for that matter. It
Hmm.
just had a lot of different layers, and you couldn't peel out. You can't really peel out one of the characters. Like the show wouldn't be the same. So I just
Yeah.
really wanted to see that. Did you watch them?
Yeah, I did. And first of all, I'm Team Kendall, but we can talk about that a different day. I watch it for the outfits, and I love watching, well, traditionally called the red carpet. It was a gray carpet this year, which was kind of weird. I just think that the dresses and the outfits are just incredible. And this year, Simona Tabasco wore this ridiculously beautiful like dress with all these like things like attached to it. Anyway, so I watch it for the outfits, but there was also this prediction that next year there will be an AI category, that it's almost like inevitable that there'll be an AI category. what do you think about that? Do you think that there'll be an AI category? I know our producer Steve does not think so, but what do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be related to it, similar to cinematography, special effects. I mean, you kind of already have a category around AI when it comes to special effects.
Hmm.
I don't know what else that could be other than that. So, but I think if you look at animation, we're using AI in lots of different ways to create. So, it may not necessarily be a specific category called AI, but definitely more categories are going to be influenced by
Hmm.
how people are creating content, media, animation styles. Even being able to personalize content or shows unique to channels or people, I think are going to be some of the more interesting things that people are making with this technology. But
Yeah. I just have a feeling it's kind of like pointed in that direction. It feels like there's going to have to be a place for a lot of this content that's being created, whether it's, screenwriting, which I know that there's a lot, no one wants to talk about that, but like, screenwriting, because of course it's being helped along right now with AI in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of controversy around that. But even kind of thinking like you're saying with the animation, are there going to be characters, are there going to be other visualizations created by AI that then show up in media that will that are really interesting and compelling to people, and how do we think about it? Do we award it? But it feels like we're moving in that direction where there's going to have to be a place for it. Okay, so let's get into our interview with Nick Bennett from Honda Motorcycles. I'm really excited to learn more about innovation and product creation from his perspective. And he has a really cool part of his job where that's related to the Honda Adventure Roads that we'll learn more about. But super excited to have the conversation with him. Chad, are you ready?
here we go.
So, Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you here today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be your guest today.
And Nick, thanks for dressing up too. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
The
Chad.
branded
Look,
hoodie.
there's one thing at Honda, we're good at wearing merchandise. We all have a job to push the brand.
I love it. I love it.
So, Nick, where are you calling in from today?
So I'm just outside of London, near our head office for Europe, which is in a place called Bracknell in Berkshire. For those not in the UK, I'll keep it simple. We're near Windsor, which you might have heard of. It's where our now king lives, that some of you may have visited. He has a castle there. So I'm about 5 miles from Windsor Castle.
Do you guys all watch The Crown over there? Because we love it.
It is popular. It is very, very popular. I think the
It's a very
last
PC
series
answer.
hasn't done well. This last series, there's still a little bit of post Diana fallout in this country. They won't let it go.
So we have a lot of topics to chat with you about specifically around AI. But first, I'd love for our audience to hear about your background. So I'd love to hear about your past experience, the steps that led you to Honda, and you have a super rad job, and we want to hear more about it.
Yeah, I'm very lucky in the current job that I do. But as you say, if we take a little step back, I'm very lucky. I went to university and studied bizarrely in film and television production and screenwriting. That was where my background started. Then worked for Sun Microsystems, who have now become known as Oracle, that kind of small tech company. So I worked on the marketing around technologies, around things like the BBC iPlayer, and kind of anything regarding playback television systems online. From that, I then moved into more centralized creative marketing, and my passion had always been that production side of content. So I then applied it to kind of marketing work, worked in a variety of marketing agencies. And then about 8.5 years ago, I got the lucky opportunity. I saw a job for Honda, which was a brand that I grew up in awe of from a creative advertising point of view. And never have I felt the pressure when going for any job interview like I did at Honda, and went, this is where I want to be. And thankfully, the stars aligned. I got given the chance to join initially in the UK business, overseeing content for cars, bikes, and power. I then moved into leading the marketing activity for the UK business. And then a couple of years ago, I made the transition to be the lead of our brand activity across the whole of Europe. So I'm very lucky. I get to oversee all of our brand activity, working with branch managers across France, Spain, the UK, Germany, which means that I take central control of our TikTok account, which we've recently launched. And I also oversee a fairly special project called Honda Adventure Roads, where 30 customers every year pay some money. They get to ride motorcycles in wonderfully exotic locations around the world and have once in a lifetime memory making experiences. And this year we're actually headed to Morocco in May. We've previously been in places like Iceland and South Africa, and it really underpins what Honda is as a business, but also what the joy of motorcycling is. So I'm very, very lucky that I get to work on projects of that nature, and getting up each morning to go to work is not a challenge. And that's kind of the Honda way. It's a company of good people that do good things.
Where's your dream location?
I think for me, the dream location would be New Zealand via Japan. I think we'd love to go back to the homeland of where it all started for Honda. I think motorcycling off-road is, it wouldn't be the ideal location based on off-road motorcycling. It's becoming a little bit more difficult. But New Zealand, for anyone that's watched Lord of the Rings, I think it's impossible not to want to go and visit some of that yourself. Even places like Cambodia, possibly even Patagonia out in South America. The world is a big place, and motorcycling will allow you to go to places that other vehicles wouldn't allow you to go to. So wherever bikes can go that other things can't go, maybe that's where we should explore next.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like innovations is kind of core to the brand. I know through our work together over the last year or two, motorcycles in particular, but kind of the transportation category in general have undergone some massive shifts, from gas to EV to, all different kinds of experiences around the consumer. And I would love for you to share a little bit around how innovation happens at Honda. Coming fresh off of CES and also seeing all the commercials out there around Honda and around the dreams and nothing is impossible. Would love for you to kind of share a little bit of that vision for innovation.
Absolutely, Chad. I think to look at where Honda's going and what Honda's vision is, it's always important to initially take a first step and look backwards. When you look at the history of Shuichiro Honda and how he founded the company, we have core philosophy beliefs that each of the associates, as we're referred to, align their values to. We have the three joys: the joy of buying, the joy of selling, the joy of creating, that underpin the work that associates do each day for the brand. And when you then maximize that and extend it, when you look at Honda's product lineup across cars, motorcycles, snow throwers, jets, lawn mowers, innovation has been at the heart of a lot of what the business is trying to achieve. And as you say, it's a very exciting time within the automation business for motorcycles and cars. We look at electrification, we look at autonomous driving, we look at safety features, and like competitor brands, there's a real surge around the changing habits of consumers when it comes to mobility solutions. And you look in, Paris is changing its approach with regard to cars not even being allowed into central areas. London has extended its congestion charge zone, where if you haven't got an electric vehicle, you either pay a penalty, financially, or you're not allowed to use the vehicle at all. Honda is, I think, ahead of the Honda is ahead of the changing world that we all live, where driven by nature, driven by other, entities, the world that we currently live in and where we're going are going to be different places in about 25 years' time. And technology is at the heart of that. And when you work for a brand like Honda, where you know that there are teams that focus solely on innovation and technology, it's exciting when you're a brand manager as those products start to roll down the line and you get to tell those stories. You know that you've got great stuff to work with. And again, it gives you that excitement and motivation to do the best that you can within the job that you're asked to do.
I'd love to jump over to AI and talk a little bit about AI in the context of Honda, but also within the transportation category. So, what's the perception there within the transportation category around this new tech that's coming in?
I think with AI, Sarah, I think the issue is that you've got to take a kind of back step and look at the communities that exist around motorcycling. Motorcycling across the majority of Europe is an aging or has been an aging form of transportation, or something that you might enjoy doing, because not everyone uses a motorcycle for the same purpose. And actually, across Europe, if you look at the attitudes and behavior of, say, people in France compared to Spain, compared to the UK, the behaviors are very different, sometimes driven by climate, whereas in the UK, I'm talking to you today, it's -2 degrees here. Not many people necessarily want to be out on their motorcycles, but in somewhere like Spain, the temperatures don't get so low, and therefore the culture is people will freely ride their motorcycle to work, carrying a child as a pillion passenger to school. It does happen in the UK, but it's not as frequent. So understanding those cultures, understanding those traditions and histories is critical around when we start to look at AI and how that technology will then start to be used within the products that Honda sells. I think, with that, there's some that, across all of them, there is a sense of traditionalism. There's that smell of petrol, gasoline, be it 2-stroke or 4-stroke, the purity that comes from riding a motorcycle, the freedom of the wind through your hair, that sensation that, elicits, endorphins and positivity when you're riding a bike. I think there's a nervousness from some customers that some of that may start to disappear as technology starts to kind of evolve within the product that they might be using. But actually, if you think about it, when you look at how technology and innovation has driven the products that those type of customers have been using for the previous 30 or 40 years, there's not that much difference. AI is a further evolvement of technology and innovation. So it's about using technology that's been enabled during that period of time that may further and better that overall experience. And as ever, I think with anything, once you maybe perhaps try something, it's then easy to kind of go, oh, wow, that's actually really cool. And something that we found with the introduction of electrification models, a lot of traditional petrol heads were maybe skeptical and concerned, but actually there's some real advantages around electrification where you can have torque that actually means that you can accelerate quicker. And so I think over time, those fears might start to go away when people start to use the products in more, on a more one-to-one level. And it's easy to join internet warriors where things are discarded, be it whatever product or brand you're representing. It's easy to join those negative clubs, but actually the positivity when you try it for the first time might just be a pleasant surprise.
Do you think that could also potentially mean new customers for Honda in the motorcycle community?
I'd hope so with new customers. And I think, a lot of the work we've done with Verve actually is looking at those communities and where those new customers are coming from. What are those coming from? Where are those changing attitudes? What are the desires? What are the barriers to entry of a younger customer? And I think the work that we've done in recent time, we've started to understand around youth, around female audiences that maybe haven't had that one-to-one focus that were required in the past. We're starting to realize that actually there's a myriad of attitudes and conditions that those type of individuals that will seek, that will allow them to get onto a motorcycle. There's a desire to do so, and it's our job and responsibility now to better understand those individuals and those communities, to build a dialogue with them, to make sure that the product, the service is what they seek. And that's, again, something that's really exciting and something that we've not necessarily done in the past all that much of.
Yeah, Nick, to double click on that without exposing too much to listeners of just kind of our work together, but I think for me personally, just being inspired by hearing from a more inclusive community globally of current riders, potential riders, needs, desires, all of that, I think was inspiring, one, to hear it, but then also making decisions off of it. When it comes to the stories we want to celebrate, around the brand and what people are looking to do. I wonder if you could share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's, what we've been able to do is start to realize that the trigger points, or what gets people excited, or what's going to give them that motivation to go and ride, is very, very different, and or can not necessarily be as clear as it has in the past. And I think those storytelling techniques of how you then use marketing collateral to build that relationship, build that trust, to then ensure that person then wants to continue their potential customer journey with you. If you can unlock some of those pivotal moments, then you know that you've got a better chance of building a rapport. And I think within motorcycling as a general entity, it's around community. And if you can harness and create a community that buys into your brand, buys into your reason, for why you exist, then it's easy to start to build those relationships. But then you have to remain true to them. You have to be consistent in your application. And that's where potentially we're going to have this juxtaposition with AI, where if you don't handle it correctly and you don't signpost and signal it, you could almost start to seem that you're not necessarily authentic. And when we talk about motorcycling, it's that authenticity that comes from the riding experience that's critical to deliver on the brand values that you've hopefully built into the relationships which you might have established online or via a piece of marketing collateral. You just need to fulfill it and maintain it, which is easier said than done, but it's something that all brands are being, we're not alone in that challenge. Certainly within the motorcycle industry, I think any motorcycle manufacturer has those challenges, but I think it applies to lots of different products and services. And it's where this intersection of AI, those that harness this, I think will see great success. Those that don't necessarily understand it and think it could be used as a bit of a tool that provides trickery may slightly come undone, because never ever underestimate the power of the human mind and them being able to decipher what's real and what's fake.
Can I ask a question about kind of literacy and adoption within Honda around AI? Like, what's the kind of, where's the trust there, or kind of a trust level?
I think within Honda, one of the challenges that we face, from my role, is we are a central European team where we have different branches across, France, Spain, Germany, UK. They have their own teams and their own responsibilities to deliver their marketing work. We work in unison with them, but we are a big team across Europe from a marketing point of view. When you then look at that across the other product groups that Honda is responsible for, AI is a huge beast, and there is a centralized technology team that is overseeing and looking at AI. I think what I can talk about at a local level, what we're trying to do is we've started to explore where AI might be able to be an advantage for us. And in the work streams that we're working on, be it the creation of new production assets or smarter and more efficient ways that we can work, it's breaking it down into three areas. Can we use AI that allows us to think in a different way? Can we use AI that allows us to make our content or our marketing assets in a different way? And can we use AI to deploy them in a slightly different way? And those are just three very primitive, small examples of where AI can be applied. But then when you think of it on a bigger scale as a business, it's not my place, and I wouldn't feel comfortable talking on behalf of Honda as a business. But I think if everybody has a responsibility in understanding where AI can be used, but always leveraging a think twice before actually doing approach, then there's some advantages to be had. But no different than how you handle, say, data responsibility. You have to tread with caution, because as much as it can be advantageous, if not necessarily applied in the correct way, I think it could be quite damaging to any brand.
Imagine a journey that transcends the ordinary, where every turn of the road brings you closer to the heart of adventure. This is not just a ride, it's a calling. Welcome to Honda Adventure Roads. Your companion, the Africa Twin. Your arena, the majestic landscapes of Morocco, where sands whisper tales of endurance and the skies beckon the brave. This is your moment to ignite the spark of exploration, to become part of a legacy that pushes not just machines, but the very boundaries of the human spirit. Honda Adventure Roads beckons you to the adventure of a lifetime. It's not just a ride, it's a journey of the soul. The roads are calling, the desert awaits, and your legend is yet to be written. Visit Honda to learn more.
Nick, how has the role of kind of the consumer or the rider maybe shifted over the last few years as as the brand has advanced, or looking at different communities or technology? Just curious how that role for them has shifted in your mind.
I think the role is shifting, and it comes back to that what I mentioned before, and it's around understanding audiences and nuances for each of those individual groups. we as a brand are committed, and we've publicly stated around desires by 2050 to have more safety features on our motorcycling or on our motorcycles, where technology is built in within the actual bikes, and the global infrastructure around autonomous driving and changing urban areas where it would be almost impossible to crash a motorcycle. Where there's features where auto stop would kind of kick in. So again, you've got to weigh up these balances. That's an incredibly powerful humanistic approach to take and the right approach to take. But you've then still got the purists that grew up on motorcycling, of the thrill and the nature of what motorcycling becomes, where you don't necessarily want to lose those ambassadors, because within motorcycling, word of mouth is a vitally important part of how we go about connecting with our consumers. If you don't have that person that introduces you to motorcycling, your potential to get into motorcycling is it's much less in nature. Bizarrely, I got into motorcycling via my love of pedal cycling. It was kind of, well, if I'm out here in Lycra, spending time, what if I got a motorbike? And I know there's a transition, a lot of cyclists are becoming motorcyclists and vice versa. But if you're a younger generation and you've not had that person in your family or within your friendship circle expose you to the world of motorcycling, what is it? What's that trigger point that's moving you forward to say that's something that I should really explore? And as we see the growth in other urban mobility solutions like scooters, walking, transportation infrastructure increasing in central cities, that poses a real risk, where if we don't necessarily find a way to communicate and talk to these new customers of today and tomorrow, then the motorcycling industry as a whole may struggle in the years to come. So it's our responsibility to listen to their needs and desires and act accordingly to ensure that the products and the stories that we sell or tell are ultimately reasons for wanting them to become a motorcyclist and ultimately a Honda customer.
And are there, I guess, aspirations to get them more involved in kind of the creation, the story, the product, the content, even around that?
I think definitely within the content and the storytelling, that's critical. And again, referring back to some of the work we've done with Verve, it allowed us to understand and talk, and we were quite pleasantly surprised hearing from those differing viewpoints across Europe from the research insight that we were managed to achieve, how different. So I think we talk in marketing about creating a one-to-one relationship, and again, talking from my own desires, not from Honda's perspective, if there's a way that you could, in a dream scenario, use insight gathered by a customer to then use AI technology to generate a piece of content or marketing collateral that creates a one-to-one sensation of listening or watching or reading a piece of marketing that inspires somebody to go, wow, that's something that I really understand. That's better understanding my needs and wants as a consumer. I'd like to invest more time understanding more about that brand, more about that product. That's where we're moving towards, because I think in the past you've had to, based on scalability of function and budget, place people in rather big pots. And you almost know that some people are going to fall out of those pots. But again, if you harness the ability of AI where you can start to create those one-to-one relationships, I suppose the risks then come. Those other brands, those other companies that also realize that and unlock that potential, how do you make sure that you're top of that shopping list? And if the person only has so much money to spend, they're picking between a holiday to the Seychelles or buying a new motorcycle, how do you ensure that you're winning hearts and minds using technology that still goes above and beyond what other brands are trying to do to promote your services or product to that customer at heart?
Yeah, it just seems like, it feels like the dream scenario of like one-to-one marketing of just, here's your life experience, here's your needs, here's your desires, here's what we have, here's what we create. And then the whole middle is like the matchmaking of, potentially here's what's most relevant for you in a language that means something to you, kind of delivered in a new way. But I know there's a lot of work to get there, but it seems achievable.
I think, look, I'm father to two young children. I've got a 12-year-old and I've got a 9-year-old, and I think for anyone that's a parent, you sometimes fall into that trap of, but the children will just, they'll just be the same. My children couldn't be any more different. They share similarities, but they're different genders. They've got different interests. That my son is more like my wife. My daughter is more like me. So if you scale that across thousands, millions of consumers, you start to realize just how different the triggers around hearts and emotions. And we know within motorcycling, it is a hearts and emotions experience, which is the trigger point for people wanting to buy a bike or getting onto a bike. It's driven by a desire, not necessarily a need. That may change over time, but within what we do, we have what we call fun and commuter as two separate kind of product groups. Our commuter group is very much focused around products that get you from A to B. Could be a scooter, could be a relatively low cc or low power output product. And then you have fun bikes like your Africa Twins and your Fireblades, where the Africa Twin, the project I mentioned earlier on around Honda Adventure Roads, that bike is built in a way that allows you to go off road, take you to places that you just physically wouldn't be able to get to by a car or other forms of transportation. So that's very much in the fun sector. So again, understanding those and hearing those customer voices to then even align them back to what's the bike that you need to fulfill what you want from having this product. If you then blow that out even further to really understand what's winning hearts and minds, it creates this one-to-one marketing communication, which I think is incredibly exciting. And there's somebody that's still, I'm going to be in this industry for at least another 25 years before I retire. I'm excited to see where it goes, having been part of this industry for the last 15, 20 years. I think it's something that we should embrace and be seeing the possibilities of. That actually it creates general buzz within our marketing, our roles, to see where this can go.
Can we talk about some of those possibilities? Where do you see it going? I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is like using AI to help you create routes for Honda Adventure Roads. There's different ways to think about storytelling. I'd love to hear from your perspective. Where do you see this going?
I mean, where I don't necessarily see it going is probably, like the Jetsons. I don't think we're at the point where we're going to have flying motorcycles just yet. That might be
You
a little
sure?
bit before our time. No, maybe. I mean,
It's
look,
gonna get messy. It's messy.
yeah. We've just about got our heads around allowing drones in the sky to, be, I'm not sure everyone's ready for flying motorcycles. But no, the point you make about route planning, it's a really interesting one. One of the things we learned, having just done the recce for the Adventure Roads project in Morocco, which is in May 2024, we went and did a recce of the route in November 2023, and we worked with a company that has a specialist route planner, and we used lots of technology to look at the route that we should go and do. We're using a device called a Trippy device, which will sit on each rider's motorcycle that navigates and tells them when they should be taking turns, because we want to create this sense of freedom. Despite all of that, we're traveling down this kind of, what might surprise some people, Morocco's not just full of sand. There's actually forests, deep forests in Morocco. And we're traveling through this forest area. And out of nowhere, we have these kind of spider monkeys jump on our cars, jump on our bikes. And nothing had suggested within the route planning or the experience of the route planner himself that we were going to get attacked by monkeys. So straight away, you start to think, is it suitable to bring 30 customers down a pathway where monkeys might jump on them? And as fun as it might be, I'm not sure we want to have any monkey tragedies on our hands from a customer event. So we found an alternative route for this one. But yeah, I think that there has to be a balance where technology gives you the ability to make better plans, but the human being that sits behind it and maintains some level of control is critical when delivering something that's authentic, when you have a responsibility of an event or an activation where a one-to-one human experience will then follow.
So that's not a great place for it yet.
Or maybe it is. I don't know. It just depends
Or if you
if
want
the AI
monkeys.
knew that you wanted, you appreciate surprise and delight and having stories to share,
There you
share with your friends. So maybe it knew something you didn't. I don't know.
Look, maybe if the customers that are attending our Adventure Roads program, I'm sure they're going to listen
They
to
wanted
this.
adventure. Yeah.
I may be inundated with requests saying, let's go visit the monkeys. So we may be wrong, but I think
I think you're onto something.
look, I think if I was one of the customers, I'd want to go and see the monkeys. And it's again, those human experiences. That's where there is a place for AI, but you still want to have a human experience that allows you to do things and have sensations. And if AI can help that, and I think, as I touched on earlier on, where I think Honda is doing some incredible work is around looking at safety features and functionality. AI, is an enabler that allows you to have better experiences. Then why wouldn't you want to embrace those positivities that come with it?
You have kiddos. What do you imagine the motorcycles will be like when they're your age and they're riding?
That's a really good question. I think, in theory, my daughter could start riding in 5 years' time, which is scary. You start to think, where's that time gone? I think they're likely to not necessarily be that different from today. I think, a fundamental of a motorcycle is still a product on 2 or sometimes 3 wheels. But I think it's more around the safety functionality that comes with that. Within motorcycling, we're very aware of some of the risks, no different than cars that come with that type of experience where, you don't necessarily have, a shell around you like you would in a car if you're on a motorcycle. So I think that focus around technology that, allows you to brake quicker or automatically kicks in if there is danger that might be anticipated. I think that's where we're likely to go when you look at the rise of electrification. We know electric plays a huge part of our industry moving forward, and Honda as a company, it's a lot of the discussions that we're having internally. And again, I think that younger audience is so much more naturally aware and are being built around, nature first. And, by comparison, motorcycles are actually a very responsible producer or emitter of carbon emissions in comparison to other vehicles. Likewise, our cars, if you look at the history of Honda with their emissions, actually, we've been a very responsible company throughout. So again, I think it's creating those, one-to-one communications. And I think, my children hopefully will still want to be on 2 wheels, see the benefits of doing so, and get that experience and joy that I have. I always have a smile on my face when I get to go out on my motorcycle, and I always, more often than not, have a smile on my face when I come back. So continuing that experience is pivotal to whatever we do next.
All right. Well, Nick, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for joining us today. This was great.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Sarah.
thanks,
Thank you,
Nick.
Chad. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, and I hope we can get some hoodies from you too.
I will get you both a hoodie. It's fine. We'll keep spreading the Honda love where we can.
Absolutely. Love it. Thanks, Nick.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Chad, that was a awesome interview with Nick. He has my dream job. I love working at Verve, but he has my dream job.
Which part with
Going
the
around the
monkeys?
world, not
Oh yeah.
with the monkeys. Well, yeah, but like just traveling around the world and figuring out where the routes are going to be, and kind of like riding motorcycles all over the place. I don't know if you know this about me, but I used to do a lot of adventure cycling, like actual like on my bike. So pack
Yeah.
up all the stuff in Mongolia and Argentina and other places. So like when I heard about that job, like man, that's so
Yeah. So I
rad.
guess what you're saying is that we're going to take the show on the road. That's what you're
Oh
saying.
yeah, to
All right.
Morocco. You want to go to
Yeah.
Morocco in
Let's do it.
2024?
Let's do it.
I think it sounds great. He was great though.
Yeah.
Any kind of highlights for you?
I think, Nick highlighted started to dig into some of the really interesting parts around, like, for marketers, how do you personalize relationships at scale? I think with the advent of all the new technology and platforms kind of coming online right now, it's going to be here before we know it, with lots of different ways to build those relationships. And, I think you're kind of hearing in real time from him as they're starting to explore, what that looks like. We're excited to be partnering with Nick on that as well. But I think that's that's really exciting. You know, from our marketer, from a product creator standpoint, is just building that relationship with someone and solving a problem. Kind of creating an experience of their life, and in this case, like adventure riding, sense of freedom that means something very different for everybody. So
Yeah, and I think especially those younger consumers he was, alluding to. So, I think their target, or not their target, but kind of their age group right now, or their for Honda motorcycles is around like 40, 45, and
mhm,
trying to reach that next generation of riders. And, what does freedom mean? What does kind of like that, you know, that expression of what the motorcycle used to be, but what does that mean for this next generation? I think is really cool, and to be able to utilize a tool like Verve to help them understand those consumers is really exciting for us.
yeah,
Um, you know, and to
yeah,
gather that information and those stories.
and you kind of see it play out too with like Stanley. Stanley, it's a brand that's been around for a long time, primarily targeted one group of people from a product. The product was great, and then just expanding and talking to more people, because a great product will find multiple audiences, but you have to get on platforms that create that exposure and awareness, and
Hmm.
then it can get adopted into lots of different communities. So if the product's good, it's going to find its way, but you also have to build the brand in a way that makes it much more porous and open to for people to kind of take it and make it their own, which
Yeah, totally.
is
What
exciting.
a turnaround with Stanley, right? Like, because
Yeah,
I remember them in the outdoor industry. They were one thing, and now like they are like, you pair it with your really cool like latest bag or outfit. It's
yeah,
just like been such a transformation.
yeah.
But you're
They're
right.
bringing straws back too. So
They are.
yeah,
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of AI Powered by People. The show is produced by Steve Berkowitz and brought to you by Verve. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next Tuesday.